Hello, and welcome to Horizons, episode 84 and 85 review. And 84 is fine. It feels like an episode that's here to pad out the arc a little bit more as Horizon attackers are going to Kamuri Town to ask about Rakua. I mean, the town looks lovely, and having Masako and Nozawa be a part of the class this episode is incredible. You can see this kid called Yuha freak out because the town thinks a black Rayquaza is a bad omen as disaster strikes when it's about. I guess the interesting thing is that Nozawa's character, the Elder Woman, is another character that's over 100 years old, and she claims to have met Rayquaza before. This piques the Rising Rock Tackler's attention, of course, as a natural connection to make as Gibeon being over 100. So Free goes off to talk to her, which means the kids are goofing off the episode where they help out Yuha, as he was getting chased by some Vibrava while looking for his Noibat, blaming Rayquaza for the whole ordeal again, which Roy opposes. So we get some information from the Elder Woman that the mountain isn't a volcano, but a long time ago there was an explosion up there. After that, she saw Rayquaza fly off to the sky. The sun was blotted out for 3 days and nights, and when it came back, a scholarly-looking man with long hair appeared. Which, to be real, is Gibeon, as the woman's mother had to nurse his wounds and warns Free to be careful going up the mountain. Pretty much the only interesting thing about the kids' subplot is how they decide to use their secondary Pokemon, fighting with Vibrava. Roy leads the battle with Kilowattrel's Uproar with Tinkatus Play Rough doing big damage next. As they take damage, Hatchram comes out to heal them. Eventually the starters have to take over though. And battling against Vibrava helps the kids connect with Yuha, as he's inspired by them and helps them escape with Noibat's Dragon Claw. As they leave, Free calls for the kids to meet. And Free has deduced that Rakua is at the top of the mountain and they need to climb it, telling the kids that Gibeon was found in that town. Before we had to cut to Maul, we saw Agate spying on Free before heading back to the Exceed building. This is where the episode gets a bit more steam for me, as the usual group leaves the Bravasagi as Rakua is in sight. Liko notes at the Exceed building before they get interrupted by a sharp cliff. This is when Terapko starts calling the heroes to do their thing, which I was seeing comparisons to being used as HM users, and honestly I'm mad I didn't make that joke. It's gold. But yeah, Arboliva helps as a rock climb, Lapras as a surf with Cleavor joining it as a rock smash, and it's nice seeing those two being used together as they've got that connection going on. You know, Gouging Fire stops a boulder, which I guess could be strength. And Moltres kind of gets to be used more in a battle capacity, I guess, as it's draining Nidoking and Tyranitar of energy. It's not like some crazy involved thing for heroes, but after all this time collecting them, I'm glad we get to see the heroes actually step up and help. And that's really what I wanted from them. I want to get to Rakua as much as Rising Rock Tacklers, and seeing Liko point out that Lucius probably have the heroes help out as much is awesome. One last push up past the clouds brings Horizon Rock Tacklers to a peak, where another thick cloud layer awaits them, and that's the end of the episode. And you know what, I think this probably is the weakest episode of the arc, but when I say that, I'm not even saying it's bad, it's just kind of mid. The first half really wasn't all that exciting, aside from tying Gibeon and Exceed to the Kamuri town, and that's more because, well, Rakua is probably nearby, and then aside from that, I just wasn't too interested in what the kids had going on. The second half definitely had some more going on, and while they don't really portray the full hike up the mountain, you get an idea of what kind of struggles and obstacles they face from the nature side to the wild Pokemon, and again, having the heroes help with that is just really great. I just kind of wish the whole episode was just the climb, really. I suppose they wanted to justify why they'd risk climbing a mountain where rescue could be nigh on impossible, as a Bravasagi can't ascend any higher safely. Overall, this episode is just fine. It exists. I wasn't overly eager to rewatch for the subs, which is partly why this review took a bit to get out. But it's not a horrible mess. I think this episode just exists for padding, and if the action delivers to the big climax of the arc, then I suppose we can't really complain. But on to episode 85, which I really quite like. First of all, we get some more HM action as Rayquaza shows up and defogs the cloud layer in the mountain. And jokes aside, I think it's so sweet how it curls up at looking sleepy and seeming lets Roy recall it to get some rest. I don't think I've ever seen a Rayquaza look adorable, but now I have. And maybe it's like Roy making a bit more progress in his new goal, as it let him recall it. I suppose making his way up the mountain is a pretty impressive thing. But Rayquaza revealed a forest that Terapkos is eager to go through, so it's time to explore. The land is very abundant and ripe. There's giant berries in all varieties, with warmth coming from the underground, which is weird, as Free does know that the mountain isn't a volcano, and being like a crater is also curious. It's easy to think this is all they're doing with Rakurium. And after a bit more walking, we get to see how Pokemon in this land live. Everything is calm, from usually violent Pokemon, well, being calm, to Predator and Prey getting on, skittish Pokemon not being scared, and even legendary Pokemon just chilling. I kind of love how seeing evolutions out in the wild has Dot wanting to send Penny a picture too. It's just a place where Pokemon can live and feel content without caring the world. I feel like there could have been a lot of expectation that Rock Rakua could have been, but it seems like a perfect home for Pokemon. And again, Free just has some unease about him, assuming this place doesn't just seem great because of proximity to the sun and temperature. It has to be something else, which I think everyone deduced is a Rakurium. But there's no crystals. There's no sign of what happened to Lucius and the explorers 100 years ago. Ristal said that Rakua was on the brink of collapse, but this place is lovely, so a group explores on. And we decide to camp as it's almost dark, with Fried remarking that kids have all grown in their own way as adventurers. The kids stargaze together as they're so close to the sky and just reminisce about all their adventures, where they've been, who they've met, the experiences they've had, the Pokemon they've helped raise and grow. It's a very sweet moment, but it does take up a good chunk of time. There's a lot of debate of writing if Horizons will end soon, which I don't think it will. I think they'll pivot the story or there'll be a crazy twist in the climax, and it does feel like it could be leading into a finale. As Terrapagos had wanted to come here to Rakua, the journey started with Rayquaza being taken out Roy's ancient Pokeball. And now they're all just there, you know? Liko has some insecurity as Terrapagos wanting to come here could mean the end of their journey. What I love is how Roy and Dot reassure her. Terrapagos wanted Liko to be his partner. It couldn't just take her to Rakua to just leave. And they want to be with her forever. And Liko puts on a happy face because the adventure isn't over. They head to sleep and we find out that Spinel is spying on them. The next morning, Roy and Crocodile leave the group and Crocodile bumps into something. We know exactly what it is. The barrier Terrapagos made to secure Rakurium. The group deduces it from other means, like the colour or the terrestrial readings. It's up to Terrapagos to tear it down again, revealing that dangerous wasteland and tiring Terrapagos out in the meantime. And I've got to say, Fried gives off so many death flags here. And of course I don't mean literal death flags because it is Pokemon, but he decides to go in alone as it could be dangerous. He makes them promise to not run without him, but he knows that's silly to ask because it is Rakua. If there could be danger, he trusts them all to do their best. And yeah, I'll be real, that man is vanishing or something. I think that'll be our crazy twist. But I always love seeing the increase of trust he has in the kids, something also darts by Roy's foot. Fried walks off and finds the Rakurium, and is ready to go back and meet the kids again, but he gets ambushed by Spinel. The kids get ambushed by the other explorers, and that's it for the episode. So this was a good one. It didn't blow my socks off, but it did do the job. It gets our heroes where they've been aiming to get to, and really we know this big battle's been coming up. So this is just more of a setup for that in a way. Honestly, it's just really nice seeing that Rakua has just kind of been preserved since the way the original explorers came through. Like, it looks very similar to a flashback we saw in episode 75, from the outer forest and to the inner bubble that Terrapagos sealed. All the bits that made that initial good first impression on Lucius did the same to our heroes here. It's just a cool place, and honestly it's something I could just imagine in a game or DLC to justify how you can get old legendaries. Like, oh, here's a cool Pokemon paradise, all the legendaries want to visit. I just kind of dig that idea, and it's kind of gamey in a way. And being a big ordeal to get to it feels pretty worthwhile in being a mostly chilled out experience. They did a really great job at making the upcoming events feel like it could be the finale. There's so much looking back at the journey and how this is the climax of what they've been adventuring for. I don't think it's actually the end though, and there's still a lot of Horizons has to address because they've left it open. Off the top of my head would be Roy versus Nemona, or Liko being off to take on the Paldea League. But if this were to be the finale, I think they would have done an adequate job building up to it and taking us back to where it began to set up the end.